Judge Andrew Napolitano. He joins me by phone. Sir, thank you for being with us. Could I just read you one more quote from the article? It says, "None of Mr. Rosenstein's proposals apparently came to fruition. It is not clear how determined he was about seeing them through, though he did tell Mr. McCabe that he might be able to persuade Attorney General Jeff Sessions and John F. Kelly, then the Secretary of Homeland Security and now the White House Chief of Staff, to mount an effort to invoke the 25th Amendment." Judge, you heard Kevin Corke, and we've been reporting this hour that Rod Rosenstein issues a very firm denial about all of this, hoping, I guess, that the president will think that this is fake news. Your thoughts?
Well, the denial is very strong and very powerful and very, very direct. And our colleagues at CNN have quoted someone who supposedly was in the room when these things were discussed and said, yes, it was discussed, but it was sarcastic, and nobody was serious about it. What comes to my mind, Dana, is that this piece in the New York Times that we're talking about is consistent with the statements made by the unnamed author of the now infamous op-ed piece in the New York Times, supposedly and identified by the New York Times as a senior administration official, characterizing a conversation among two or more members of the president's cabinet about invoking the 25th Amendment. It just occurred to me, my memory was jogged as I was listening to Kevin. Look, we don't know what happened. If the president believes the piece in the New York Times, and the president is the severest critic of the New York Times in the country, but if he believes it, I'm sure he'll fire Rod Rosenstein, and that'll create a tremendous amount of turmoil in the Justice Department. If he believes Rod Rosenstein's denial, then we'll talk about this for 3 or 4 days until the Kavanaugh thing comes back on the headlines.
But this does come on the same week that the president has been very critical of his Attorney General Jeff Sessions, even telling a reporter this week, "I don't even have an Attorney General." So he's been frustrated with Jeff Sessions for a long time, and he's never fired the Attorney General. And sometimes I wonder why he keeps basically hanging him out there to dry, but he doesn't seem to want to go as far as to fire him. Could this be the straw that breaks the camel's back?
Well, if the president were to fire the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General, then the acting Attorney General would be the Solicitor General of the United States. The statute requires that an acting Attorney General be someone who has already been confirmed by the Senate for
and that happens to be Noel Francisco. He's the
correct. Noel Francisco is a very bright academic person, not known to be politically involved in any respect at all. He is a Donald Trump appointee out of the private sector to this job. I can't even predict how that might affect the Mueller investigation or where it would go from there, or even if Bob Mueller would stay in his job, because with both Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein gone, and we're really speculating here, Dana, there would be no conflict between the Attorney General and the job of the DOJ. And so all of Mueller's work might very well then be passed on to Main Justice, or maybe Noel Francisco would want to keep Mueller in. This is really very speculative, and I'm just trying to play out a couple of scenarios
and you're helping our viewers try to understand what could happen. But let's also talk about something else in the article. I want to read one other part, and forgive me for reading off my phone here, but this is breaking news. The article says that this extreme suggestion shows Mr. Rosenstein's state of mind in the disoriented days that followed Mr. Comey's dismissal. Sitting in on Mr. Trump's interviews with prospective FBI directors and facing attacks for his own role in Mr. Comey's firing, Mr. Rosenstein had an up-close view of the tumult. Mr. Rosenstein appeared conflicted, regretful, and emotional, according to the people who spoke with him at the time. Now, that is not necessarily new reporting. Like, we knew that there was a concern that his truthfulness and his integrity was being questioned by people that he has worked with for many years at the Justice Department. And so you could understand that there might be some concern, but also, if it was said sarcastically, are we blowing as the New York Times, blowing this up out of proportion when you have somebody maybe just blowing off steam and making jokes just to get through the day?
Well, it is well known, as you've indicated, that Rod Rosenstein was not happy about the manner in which Jim Comey was fired. And it is well known that when the president asked Rod Rosenstein to give him a memo summarizing reasons that he, the president, could use for firing Comey, and then he fired Comey and he published the memo, that Rosenstein was completely taken aback because he claimed that was being thrown under the bus, that he didn't want Comey fired, or that he wrote the memo because he was ordered to and never expected the memo would become public and never thought the memo would be stated as the purpose for firing Comey.
Right.
Now, again, none of that is new, and that is water under the bridge between Donald Trump and Rod Rosenstein, and they meet on a regular basis and have consulted on many, many things in the Justice Department since the days when Jim Comey was fired, which is now about 16 or 17 months ago.
Okay, there is brand new information, Judge. Just now, again, let me read off my phone. One of our producers finding out that they're told this meeting took place on May 16th at Maine Justice Department, and the subject arose of the possibility of the appointment of a special counsel to investigate Russia election meddling. Several people are in the room. These names will be familiar to you, including Andrew McCabe and Lisa Page. From another source who was in the room, I remember this meeting and remember the wire comment. The statement was sarcastic and was never discussed with any intention of recording a conversation with the president. A former DOJ official tells Fox News to remember that there is an active investigation into McCabe being conducted by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, and, quote, an indictment could be coming. This seems like McCabe is getting desperate.
You know, the New York Times has really put a stick into a hornet's nest here, because this reporting is obviously not complete and obviously not conflicted. And now we have someone, also unnamed, claiming to have been in the room, who said everybody else in the room thought it was sarcastic. The New York Times is relying on the one person in the room who thought it was serious.
Judge, I'm going to ask you to stick around. I got a hard break. Stick around. We'll be right back.